Welcome back to this part of our program. I really hope you've enjoyed the morning, and I also hope you're going to enjoy this first panel session, Rethinking the Energiewende, how to build a global green hydrogen economy. So we all know there are big questions that we still need to solve and answer regarding the efficiency and scalability of hydrogen, but we also know that this is going to play a crucial role in reaching net zero carbon emissions by the middle of this century. Also, this whole dynamic and this whole technology and sector really has the potential of reshaping international corporations between countries and rethinking energy dependencies. So what could the impact of global green hydrogen economy be, and what could the impact of a new phase perhaps of energy cooperation also look like? That is a question we want to address on this panel, just as the question of what the feminist dimension for this global green economy transition could look like, and why it is so important to see it through the gender lens and from a feminist perspective. So I am thrilled to have the panelists here with me on stage. We are also looking forward to your questions, comments, and interventions, so please don't be shy and use our room microphone to make these. Just a quick reminder that the session, as all of our sessions today, is going to be recorded. And now let me introduce you to our distinguished panelists. To my right, I would like you to welcome Sharouk Abdelghani, who is currently the Director of Planning and Organizational Development in the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources in Jordan, and brings over 16 years of experience to this panel. Welcome. To my left, I would like you to warmly welcome Dr. Kirsten Westphal, who is the Executive Director at H2O Global Foundation and leads the Independent Analysis and Research Division. Kirsten is also a member of the National Hydrogen Council and Deputy Head of the Advisory Council of the Hydrogen Roadmap of Baden-Württemberg. Welcome, Kirsten. Next to Sharouk, please welcome Vanessa Pulgren, who has over 10 years of working experience in funding and policy, extensive international scope and impact, including in the field of climate adaptation, smart cities, and digitization policy. She currently holds the position of funding and policy manager at EIH2, Ireland's first green hydrogen company, where she's busy building relationships at the national and European level between different actors in the sector. It's great to have you here with us today, Vanessa. And to Vanessa's side, please welcome Mariam Ghafarin, who's the Senior Process Engineer, Ministry of Petroleum at the South Pars Gas Company in Iran. It's lovely to have you here with us today. And last but not least, next to Kirsten, please welcome Tanja Fahler, who's an internationally renowned pioneer in the field of sustainable and green energy finance, and currently head of the Energy and Climate Tunisia section of the Deutsche Gesellschaft für Internationale Zusammenarbeit. It's great to have you here with us today, Tanja. So I want to start off by just setting the scenes a little bit with a general understanding of the role of green hydrogen in the energy transition before focusing on the topic of partnerships and the feminist perspective. So, Kirsten, can you please kick us off with an overview of the extent of the role hydrogen, in your view, is really going to play in our future energy systems and what we need to get there?
I think we all know that we need three pillars. The first point is, of course, energy efficiency and energy savings. Then, of course, green electrification, and then we also need green molecules. So it's one of the big pillars, and I think green hydrogen will play a huge role in sector coupling, as we say, but also providing stability and flexibility in the system. And to me, it's very exciting because I think transporting electricity across the globe has, of course, its limits, even though we are looking into high voltage direct currency lines. But the connecting part will be done by the green molecules or hydrogen PTL products. So this is something, I wouldn't say the new oil because it's less, but it will certainly be a part of the international trade. And I'm actually previously worked a lot on geopolitics of energy, and I think hydrogen will be a huge driver for international relations as well.
With a lot of shifts also in geopolitics to be expected if this actually comes into play in full swing, that we definitely want to also address.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, because I very much think that hydrogen can also be a bridge and also be a lifeline, not a lifeline, but really a channel to work together to together decarbonize gas delivery chains, for example, in order to really address the climate challenge. So it's really a point for international cooperation.
Okay, and gas delivery is something perhaps that we can also touch upon later. But first of all, Vanessa, I would like to ask you, as you're also working with different stakeholder groups and really have this sort of different perspectives in mind, how do you see the conversation going? How can hydrogen be scaled up in a manner that benefits all the different stakeholders and doesn't conceal or perpetuate some of the environmentally potentially harmful practices?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And actually, I agree as well with the importance of green hydrogen. Just complementing as well there, what we like to call it is like the energy systems integration. So we call hydrogen as a piece of the puzzle to actually decarbonize and reach our net zero goals 2050. On top of that, however, for us, it's either green hydrogen or it's no hydrogen, because it has to come from renewable sources, and we must ensure the certification of origins. So where is it coming? Have there been environmental impact assessments? Are we also working together with all type of stakeholders? And by that we mean policymakers, involve people from different sectors, electricity, the whole supply chain as well, from the very beginning. So that holistic approach is what is needed to achieve a green hydrogen economy. Then as well, we need to be honest. I think that honesty is very important when you stay with the stakeholders, and not to consider green hydrogen, even though I am here representing a green hydrogen company, we have to be honest and say that green hydrogen is part of this, but we can't use it as a silver bullet to reach decarbonization. We must be honest that where it needs to be electrified, it can be electrified, and then green hydrogen will play a part for sectors hard to decarbonize, like cement or the steel industry. Like, there are brilliant projects in that sense that we can see now happening in the Scandinavian countries, for instance. So I think those three parts that I would like to say, like green certification, like it's coming, certification that is coming from renewables, honesty with the stakeholders, not to consider as well the as a silver bullet. And then I would also like to say that we need to be aware where we are locating green hydrogen projects. We know about hydrogen valleys now, and that means being close to industrialized hubs that we can decarbonize and where green hydrogen can take a part. So I think that all those components can make hydrogen a sustainable solution and environmentally friendly.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I think those are really important and clear points that you made. Shahrukh, maybe I can bring you in. I would love to hear how, from the Jordanian perspective, you are seeing hydrogen and green hydrogen sort of as part of the puzzle or as a key focus point in energy supply and transition.
Thank you. First, I would like really thank the organizer for these opportunities and gathering women from different countries to discuss this important topics. Hydrogen is very important, and it will really take an important role in energy transition. Especially because now all the country working on decreasing the carbon emission. So hydrogen will take an important role, especially green hydrogen, since it work aligned with renewable energy. And it will be an opportunity for countries that have a high radiation and a high potential for producing renewable energy. What is important also in hydrogen is the uses of hydrogen in different sectors. And this is also very important for the economy. Using hydrogen in transport, power generation, in the refinery, in industry, And reducing the emission, as my colleague said, in industry is very important by reducing emissions. What we need to implement that is policies. We need from government to take into consideration hydrogen in their long energy strategies. And taking this into consideration, that will incentivize the industry to put a long-term goals for using hydrogen, and that will reflect on the future of sustainable, clean hydrogen. In Jordan, we are working. We also start doing on that. We are now reviewing our Jordan energy strategies for the year 2020-2030 to take into consideration hydrogen. We have a study now with the Australian company to establish a project for hydrogen for exporting with 5 giga renewable energy. We are working now with the Jordan-German partnership, and we would like to thank them also for their support for preparing a roadmap for using hydrogen in different sectors in Jordan. Participatory approach is very important. Government, investors, private sector, they all should work together to really achieve the objective of reaching a clean, sustainable future of energy. Thank you.
Thank you, and maybe we can look a little bit in more detail in a minute at the nature of the partnership and how you're going around building of these policies, but thank you for giving us that overview, Shahrukh. And just a reminder to your fellow panelists, do feel free to jump in whenever you like in the conversation. So let's start talking a little bit about these partnerships, but also getting back to what Vanessa said, Tanya, this holistic approach that's needed and the honesty with the stakeholders. How do you go about designing the future of an economy that incorporates these aspects, and how do you go about building partnerships in this area?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what matters right now, because we have a very unique opportunity. You know, Walburga said, like, solar is building a new table. I'm challenging her like that. Mm-hmm. Solar has a table. You're probably still reconstructing it and making it bigger. Hydrogen is building a new table. We're building a whole new structure of a green hydrogen economy in the years to come. So that actually means we now are in the unique historic opportunity to be creating seats at the table. And that's a gender topic, but it's also a partnership topic. Partnership in the sense, let's walk eye to eye. Let's not build it from, let's say, the more developed countries to the other developed countries. And let's make sure it's a very diverse table. I think we've learned that depending on one country doesn't really pay off when you want to be energy self-sufficient. And not picking any country, I think it's just about the diverse structure. So that's the unique approach to partnership that I think really matters, and that's why a holistic approach there is important. And our role in that is also to really raise the flag right now that hydrogen is a new and important topic. Because countries that are still struggling with creating generation capacity, renewable generation capacity, or even with electrifying. I mean, I remember 3 years ago, I was at the Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue, and a lady from one of the West African countries stood up and she said, "This is really interesting, all these power to whatever. I'm having a problem getting people connected to the grid. So what do you think I can tell my voters that I'm now investing in power to X?" And that's an important topic, that we raise the flag there. If you don't build the system now, there may not be a space at the table later. And really being mindful about who we invite to the table and making sure we really point out that country that may say, you know what, not our topic yet, and creating, let's say, research capacity there.
Can you outline a couple of examples or points that you think are crucial that we need to get right now? Like, what are these points that need to be considered so that we move toward the future that's desirable?
So, coming exactly from that space, we must make sure we don't only take our hydrogen from 4 or 5 countries. Mm-hmm. This doesn't pay off. We've seen it with gas. Mm-hmm. It just really doesn't pay off. We want to make sure that countries have a fair chance to develop towards hydrogen exporters. But only export may not be an option too, because the communities in those countries may want to benefit from what you called green molecules, very important, so that we can build an industry around it. Now we all think about the hydrogen in terms of e-fuels from the classical topics, but in 50, 60 years, there will be a whole new methanol-driven industry coming. So we must make sure we really include the local communities there. Thirdly, and I think that comes really from the point of diversity, we must make sure it's not the same old figures sitting there that created a carbon industry. So we want to be mindful, and that's really challenging, because who are we to tell a country who to appoint? And I see it very often that, like, in a country where we have a clear structure within ministries, I can't just go and say, look, I want to have this woman, she's really innovative, and please invite her to Munich. I can't do that because there are things. So it's really a soft skill of creating awareness and bringing allies and stakeholders in. So those are 3 elements. There's more, but I don't want to bring them all. We have many more women that know. I would like to hear your opinion on what's needed. What would you need from countries like Germany in a partnership?
Yeah, I want to get back to the perspective in a second. Vanessa, we're not along. Do you want to add something to that?
Yes, I would actually like to, yes, again, complement that part that now it is a moment where we can reset all the old systems that we had, and these type of spaces are very much welcome and necessary, and it's great to see the encouraging words of so many amazing women that we had in the previous moment. But on top of that, like, because it's a moment to reset, we must to be inclusive and not to make the same mistakes that were made previously, as well from the gender perspective. Now there are more women sitting at the tables, we still need to do more, but because of that, like, the diversity of voices brings a whole new perspective that will lead us to our objectives. So, that being said, this is exactly what we need. This is the moment that we need to take advantage of to participate, to raise our voice, to complement to hydrogen, to electricity, to renewables, to all sides of the energy world, and take part of it and own it.
Yeah, of course there are always 2 perspectives to this, the perspectives of the energy importer and the perspective of the energy exporter. So it would be, as Tanya said, great to hear also from your perspective, Shahrukh, to hear, now having heard Tanya and Vanessa on this, what is important from your perspective to get these partnerships right?
I think also for countries that produce hydrogen and countries import hydrogen, it should be a win-win situation for both countries. And I think we should start working from now on investment opportunities. Hydrogen is a new topic, opening new investment opportunities or opening new job opportunities. And this job opportunities is open for all. Women should have their rights and it should be open for all the women. It also depends for us to get and work on ourselves, build our capacity, empower the women in the energy sector to work in this field. This field is now the future, and we should start working on this topic since we will have many job opportunities in the future, and now I think it will be open for all. It is our chance also to present ourselves in this sector and and have our opportunities.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And of course, we've outlined the importance of looking at different stakeholders and different actors. I want to segue a little bit and give you the opportunity to share, Mariam, from your perspective, working for, let's say, a traditional energy provider. What do you see also your role in this conversation, but also if you can share with us just in general a little bit the role of women working in the energy sector in Iran, and particularly also in the organization that you represent.
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to this valuable conference. Generally speaking, as you know, Iran has the great capacity of energy. But unfortunately, especially I work as a senior process engineer in South Pars gas complex that is located in southern part of Iran. And around more than 15 years ago, women was the number of women that is working oil ministry is not compared to men. But women try to do their best and regarding to Paris Agreement that and climate problem changes, Iran committed to decrease its greenhouse gases to around 10%. The most important things that is done, we have a lot of work during these 15 years. For example, most of Iran, unfortunately, Iran and Middle East region, such as Iraq, has the substantial amount of GHG that should, first of all, we should work to decrease, and then we should move forward to the renewable energy and clean energy especially. For example, in these years, most of things that is done, as you know, I'm not a hydrogen expert, but I work as a senior process engineer, and we really try to consider the environment matter during the modification. For example, we did some modification regarding to decreasing the failure. As you know, most of the flaring in Iran, we have 2 sites that is located in southern part of Iran, site 1 and site 2, that is composed of 25 phases, and Southwest gas complex is the largest reservoir that is common between Iran and Qatar that provide 8% of gas condensate reservoir. In this regard, we really do a lot. For example, based on design, the design really didn't done in the best way based on environmental aspect. We work, most of the flaring that's really existed in Iran comes back to some phases that are in startup commissioning. In commissioning as a startup, unfortunately, the high amount of flare really happened, but we study the procedure of the startup, we revise the procedure and try to decrease it nearly 75%. We are working to decrease it, we are moving forward to zero flaring. Really, they are going to done in Iran, but unfortunately, about the hydrogen capacity, we didn't build up, we didn't do anything, and we need some international community, such as this conference, help us, first of all, for training, and then for really try to build a structure to work, to move forward the hydrogen capacity build-up.
Thank you so much, Mariam, for those insights. And yeah, that's exactly what we're here to do, of course. I want to circle back and ask to this side of the panel, but please feel free to jump in. How then do we, again, getting back to how we're building these partnerships, and how do we do it differently than perhaps in the past, looking at countries who are the energy suppliers and countries who are classically the energy consumers, to avoid creating perhaps the same dependencies or also hierarchical relationships that we've had in the past? So to put it in a very blank statement, how do we avoid making what we call developing countries or countries of the global south just the exporters of resources that we benefit from? So I was giving you very easy questions today, Christian.
Very easy, exactly. I try to at least look from my viewpoint. I think what is very critical is to have a level playing field, and as levelized as possible in order to decrease market barriers and the barriers to market entry. Why am I saying that? Because I think the big advantage of renewable energies, renewable hydrogen, is that you can use it centralized and decentralized. But in order to have the market access for almost all, you have to have a kind of a marketplace. And as Tanya said, we are always talking a market ramp up, but that's not the case. We are trying a technology ramp up. We are trying to scale up the technologies, and we still need a marketplace. And that's why I'm now joining H2 Global, because that's the idea of this non-profit organization, to provide transparent price signals, to provide a transparent criteria for products, for market participants, but also for projects. And this is here where I think it's very important, because you ask what could be a way to create really a better energy world and a more levelized, it basically a just global energy transition. And I think that's really a huge task, a Herculean task in many dimensions, because energy transformation as such is one, and we don't have the governance. But I think what we do have is the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And we all know that energy is in the interface of a number of those, of the energy, water, food nexus, and we're realizing that now in a very dramatic way. So what we're trying in now setting up the criteria for our first auctions for green hydrogen products is exactly to integrate the SDGs into our criteria. And the hope is that with H2 Global and our work, we will provide a reference point for other projects, for other marketplaces. And this is what I mean. I think that's very important in order exactly to avoid the problems of the past and the difficulties of the past, where we've seen very big point-to-point deals and intransparent ones over the counter. So we want to kind of leapfrog and exactly start with that marketplace, which is so important to bring the decentralized actors in as well. And then, of course, you have, and I don't want to talk too long, but it's a fascinating issue, because on the other hand, also the value chain and the logistical chain is so different from the fossil world, because it's much more technology driven. You're no longer generating the value with a resource. So no longer that kind of big rents on both sides and vertically integrated companies, but you can have a very flexible infrastructure. The value distribution is much more equal if you design it. And exactly we have to work in that way.
Thank you. I want to pass this question around the panel, because I personally also think it's a really crucial one. So I'd love to hear also your perspective, Tanya, from the Tunisian and GIZ position on how you're approaching this.
Equally, a super easy question, no? So I think one role is key, and there I think it may be interesting, Kirsten, to hear you on that, because we're supporting in several countries, including in Tunisia, the development of national clean hydrogen strategies. And that's, if we talk really from a feminist foreign policy and from a feminist development policy, what do we have to watch out for when we do that? When we advise countries on doing that, careful, we're not doing it. We're working with them to do it. And I feel blessed and extremely grateful that we have that opportunity. And that already shows the willingness that there is in several countries to really embark on a new level playing field. And one of the roles that I think is important are the national hydrogen councils and the national systemic structures that are put out in countries. And how do we make sure there that, and our managing director is speaking on the feminist foreign policy level. So I would argue we have a systemic issue and we have a policy issue. Systemically, how can we push, for instance, for quotas in those councils? for quotas in this decision. It's a super challenging thing because we can't just go to countries and like tell them, yeah, you should have a couple of women in it. We can kind of insinuate it's a good idea, but there may be a backlash if we're too strong on it because, oops, you only want women, you don't care about us. And if we make it too obvious, it's not going to be in favor of no one. So we must make sure everybody wins, as you rightly said. There is a win in it for everything. Secondly, I mean, from a policy perspective, an auction system is very, very smart, a transparent system. I'm not as optimistic because the decentralized nature of hydrogen, I see it in theory, in practice, it's a capital-intensive infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So a capital-intense infrastructure by nature is not has high entry burdens. So there, I think we may have to think a little bit through how we can make countries and, let's say, certain stakeholders within countries participate. But yeah, I think one is a systemic level and the other one is a policy level. And both of them are challenges, and in both of them advising and working with countries, sharing our errors, sharing what we've done well and not so well in Germany could, for instance, be interesting. And the energy partnerships do that extraordinarily. I mean, one of the best things that we've had in Tunisia was, and Ellen set that up, so was the conversation with the Tunisian stakeholders, with the people within BMWK that actually did the strategy. And we were just like, everybody in the room, it was online, was staring and like, wow, that's how you've done it. So that was something at an eye-to-eye level. People, they were excited about it because we didn't come with a book on how to do it. We had a real human virtually there saying, yeah, that was like this didn't go that well. So really, and that's the type of exchanges we need more of.
Yeah, thanks. And like a real human virtually there.
Yeah, I didn't say I'm optimistic, but I think it's normative. I think it is a normative goal to establish this level playing field and to ripe exactly the opportunities that we have with the decentralized. And of course, then you have to try but if we don't build this level playing field in the marketplace, we won't get there. And my point was really that the technology value chain or the whole value chain is so much different from fossil fuels. And my hope is also, to me, it's not a reset. But maybe it depends from country to country because we come from very different stages, and this is also a big challenge. Yeah. But I think that what I try to say is use what we have in the ground and as channels of companies as well. I don't like this split around fossil world and the renewable world. No, it's one energy world, and we have to find the transitional pathways. We are now trying, because I don't know, but I think that I'm so enthusiastic about H2 Global, not because of course I think it's a smart instrument, but it's exactly smart because we're trying to kick it off right now, and this urges us to use and to look what are the bits and pieces that we can use. That's the kind of logistical facilities that are already standing, or creating new ones. And I'm not at all saying it will be easy. And I'm now deep into that, but at least we get the lessons learned, and then we have a learning space and a test space. And this is what the instrument creates. And I think, and I stop here, but this is, I think, really, honestly, I think what we need, because we're talking and strategies are fine and governance mechanisms are fine. I agree. But if we don't start, if we don't allow the test phase and then take the learning and redesign instruments, then we won't kick it off. So I don't want to see the barriers, I want to see the chances.
That's why it's great that you're building this space, and I think we can all agree on the panel about the normative goal of the level playing field, as you phrased it. I want to pass on the question to this side of the panel as well. First of all, to you, Shahrukh.
Thank you. I will start at the end point from Natalia. Participatory approach is really very important. Mm-hmm. Working with all the stakeholders, it is one of the key issues to really have a success project, because you need to build in the previous experience. Working with them also makes them feel that they own this topic. You want to benefit from their experience. From the infrastructure, one of the challenges for the hydrogen project is the infrastructure, but we can build on the current infrastructure, like the port, the pipelines. So we need to work together, the regulations. How can we remove the barriers in the current regulations to incentivize the investors in the hydrogen project? Working together and building on the current experience, exchanging knowledge and experience between all the country is very important. Building on and using the current infrastructures, hearing from others. How can we develop and improve our regulation? I think it's also very important in working in this topic also.
So I just want to recap also for myself to see if I understood correctly before passing it to you, Vanessa. But when building partnerships and when forging new alliances also between countries, it's important, and I'm just rephrasing here, so please correct me if I got it wrong. It's really important to consider not just the financial aspects of it and to see the bigger picture. So also to see where can capacity building jointly take place, where can technology transfer and joint innovation measures take place to really make sure that we do get to that more level playing field. Okay, great, thank you. Vanessa, I'm sure you have...
Right, and to add into that is that now that we're talking about energy transition means that there's still existent skills that will be transferred, that are building up into coming to the hydrogen or renewables. So in that sense as well, I've had the opportunity to work with people who used to work in gas and now they're working in hydrogen, because it has to be connected. We cannot just completely forget what's been done. It's like they're upskilling. It's, again, and going back to the partnerships, I think that there are great opportunities. We just saw in the COP26 as well, the Hydrogen Coalition happening there, where it's like a matchmaking space. So this type of events bring us as well, like from different backgrounds. I've seen also two sides. Like, I'm originally from Ecuador, so it's a country rich in oil, working in international cooperation there and for energy with sustainable communities in the Amazon, and how those voices obviously matter because that's where oil is. And then now, working for a green hydrogen company, we have also partnerships with Germany, the German-Irish Hydrogen Council, where we exchange as well the needs of Germany for green hydrogen and the capacity that Ireland has for exporting. But these are not just one conversation. As I said, like, the spaces are so many, and all these issues must be put in one pot and then bring a conversation and get, like, to have specific targets that we can reach in an inclusive and the opportunities as well for upskilling from different silos. So yeah.
Thank you so much. If there's any other comments from the panel, if not, I would love to also open for your question and comments. We have about 10 minutes, 15 minutes left. There's a microphone right here, and if you want to help out everybody else in the room, then it would be great if you want to come and visit this central microphone without being shy. Please, it's right there. And yes, both of you, all three of you who raised your hands, why don't you feel free to take the microphone stand after each other.
Everybody, it's nice to meet you here, and I would like to thank my colleagues from Jordan, Engineer Shuruq. We are proud of you all, and the team of energy sector. I'm an energy expert working in the water sector, and I have a comment regarding the hydrogen. I think that every country should have its own idea about the energy transition, because maybe the conditions for each country is different. We are for sure concentrate on making this type of, let's say, mix of resources or energy securing, but we should take into consideration that one of the main obstacles that we are facing in Jordan is the water scarcity, because the water will be the source for hydrogen. So we are suffering to securing pure water to drinking, as all of the world know, and all of the donors are supporting us on this issue. So for that, when we are talking about, let's say, producing hydrogen, maybe we will face a problem or obstacles regarding the water resources for that. Maybe we could go for, let's say, the brackish water or the seawater, and will be costly. So by the end, we will compare this, make a lot of visibility study to compare this by the other technology for storage, like such that pump storage, and we have with the energy sector another project concentrate on that. So this is my feedback regarding this issue, and I hope that we will have pilot, but it's good to mention this point at this session to be taken into consideration, because in Europe, for example, the situation is different. The water is available everywhere, and it's a resource. So you could benefit easily from this resource in order to make this type of innovative storage. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your comment. Is there any response? Tanya, please.
I would like to take that. Of course you can too, but I want to offer another perspective on that. So yes, water is a big issue for developing a hydrogen economy. However, desalination is always an option. The cost of that is there. In a study we've done in Tunisia, so I can't speak for Jordan, it only increased the cost of hydrogen by 2%. So yes, we must make sure there is no water taken that we would need for agriculture. We already have a negative water balance in Tunisia. I don't know about Jordan. I think it may not be that great either. But it's possible, and 2% of the cost is something we may want to be willing to pay in order to make sure it's viable, it fulfills ESG criteria, and it will already, most of the plants will be financed by international banks. So we'll have ESG criteria either. I don't think it's something that will be limiting. I think it adds an additional layer of complexity, but it's not the no-go. And maybe one last comment, and then I'll let you speak, is in order to do hydrogen, you need basically two things. You need solar and you need wind. I don't think there's a whole lot of countries on the planet where you have solar, wind, and enough water. So I think it's just a conversation we must have, and a conversation where we have to make sure that we fulfill the right criteria. And that's why structures are important, and transparency that you mentioned, and the financing criteria that have to account for that. So that's another thing that I hope you will be considering, like what does it mean if I do it in this context? How would I count in a transaction level that I have to have water desalinated, etc. So it's a very important point, but not a deal breaker.
Thank you, Tanya.
Just a quick comment on that as well. But I think that in the case as well in Ireland, even though it's a country where it rains a lot, we also have the challenge of water. And what we do is seeing it as from an optimistic perspective as well, and an opportunity to create like this circular economy as well. And there is wastewater that will complement the projects that we have. And for that as well, and comes again the partnerships, the conversations where, and I always say, when there's a will, there's a way. And I think that part of talking to other companies who might have wastewater and say like, look, we can connect to the amazing wind resources that we have in Ireland, then it's like, okay, then things can be done. So in that sense, is looking for that opportunity, like wastewater in our case.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. Sure.
Thank you. Just to give you a quick fact about Jordan. Jordan is, as you know, is a sunny country. We have around 300 days of the year with sunny days. We have a good opportunity for producing hydrogen, and as I mentioned before that we are working now on a study for using hydrogen in Jordan through the Jordan-German partnership. I believe that is always a solution for everything. Innovation now is our way to the future. During our studies, as Natalia referred, the desalination is the option, and it will not use a high amount of water, and it will be the concept that we will use during using hydrogen in Jordan.
Thank you. I would like to take the two more questions of the people who raised their hands earlier. So the lady in the white top and the lady behind her in the brown blazer, both of you, your questions I'd still like to take. Please.
So, yeah, before we get started, as participants, we got opportunity to talk. So firstly, I would like to thank BEE and IHZ for, implementing this, and also all the sponsors and partners. Okay, maybe before I shoot my question at you, I would like to quickly summarize, if that's fine for you, because at least I see this panel discussion as really great output from you all. I think 5 of you, and you great moderation. Okay, right now where we are is we are talking about economy with hydrogen, but which economy is cost competitive, right? The 4 points you mentioned, first starting from left, Venetia, stakeholder management is really, really important. And Shiro, and you mentioned about logistics, storage, and distribution. Without that, we can't move forward. An amazing point from you, Christine, about technology. Without technology, electrolyte is the one which needs most of the money for getting into hydrogen, either from wind and solar. That's about technology is a great point. And last but not least, from you, Tanya, the great point about diversity, right? Not one country is taking everything that we have split. So that's a great summary, I feel, because these are the key points for low cost. And my question to you is, when we're talking about transition, we need definitely wind and solar to move into hydrogen or to make economy. Right now, we had really not good policies to rise up the wind and then get into hydrogen, because we need to look into short term and long term. Without wind and solar, we can't get enough storage for hydrogen, right? Which policies or which factors could change in the next as a short term, you see?
Are you addressing it to someone particular who would you like to pick it up?
Sure. This is why I mentioned governance. I think to me governance is key. We won't have a certification guarantees of origin scheme without the right governance. And it has to certainly start at the national or regional level. But I think we have to quickly internationalize standards in order to have the level playing field. And we are quite far from that, so here I'm very pessimistic, but again, we have to work on that. But to me, governance is really the key, and the certification issue is a very difficult one. And this is why I think, why am I mentioning it? It's a very difficult one, because we see that we have different approaches to establishing the value chain. Germany, in particular, I would say, is looking into really a green delivery chain and value chain, and is building from the end product of having green hydrogen. When I look to Japan and Middle Eastern countries, they are really looking into first developing the logistical chain, and then later decarbonizing that. I'm not judging, but I think we will see different speeds here, and this might become a problem as well for kind of fragmentation of the world as well. So I would really like to see common standards, but here also the picture is that we lack a real common institution who could be in the lead of the driver.
Any other quick comments on this?
Yes, like in Ireland as well, and we have an opportunity at a moment, although we feel that as well we've taken too long to do it. We're building the green hydrogen strategy for Ireland, and for that there are open consultations, and because we have an opportunity there to engage with the government directly and propose the specific incentives that industry would need to move into green hydrogen, a specific pieces of a local engagement, community engagement that will need to be part of that to be sustainable. And then as well, research and innovation. Are we funding, are we making researchers their lives easier? In terms of, are we connecting them as well as other existing research that is out there? Are we creating the right spaces for that to happen? Are we leaving enough time as well to this to be fully thought? And I think that that is very important to set a specific and targets that will lead us into a green transition and to policy making. And for that, it's the participation, it's the encouragement of every piece of the puzzle and governance from bottom up, communities, individuals, NGOs, government, industry to take part of it. And that's, yes, you mentioned it well. I am passionate about a stakeholder engagement and connecting the dots to reach a common goal.
Thank you very much for that. And now we'd like to take the final question, please.
Thank you. You all agree that this industry is a huge opportunity, but I wonder why don't you speak about the potential environment damage, or if perhaps there is no risk?
Thank you. We did, in fact, not address the risks on this panel, so let's do a very quick round on that. Also, leading into the closing of the panel, who would like to begin?
Thank you for this question. I think hydrogen, especially green hydrogen, since it is used renewable energy, it's very important for the country that are working now, because all the country now for reducing emissions and moving toward the targets for net zero emissions by 2050. It is very important and it is very useful for the environment issue and the climate change. And I think now all the country taking this into consideration and talking about addressing hydrogen in their national strategies and NDC's document to have the benefit for and get financing the project related to this aspects. Thank you.
I also I do believe there are risks. The risks, for example, of the cost of electricity. The risks that electrolyzers, we might not have enough by the time that projects come to the pipeline and start happening. So for that, again, it's the right policy in place, it's the right innovation and approach to research and motivation to those that are building that, producing electrolyzers. And then again, we have the risks of leaving people behind. And I think that is the headline as well of the SDGs, leaving no one behind. And for that, we must bring as well people who've been working in other type, here my colleague, and oil and people from gas, to come together and to shape us with their knowledge already. They know, they've been working on this for long. So I think that while there are risks, those risks also have the opportunity to be addressed and to be addressed in a better way, which is an inclusive way.
Is it something you want to also quickly comment on, Mariam? How would you like to see organizations like yours to be, not left out of the picture and part of the conversation in future on this topic?
Would you repeat?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if you also wanted to comment on the risk, as Vanessa just said, that we need to include everyone and not leave, not to create more divisions, let's say, specifically also between women working in the sector, between more traditional energy suppliers and this conversation about green hydrogen.
About the green hydrogen, I recommended hold this kind of conference, hold this kind of conference in the future and convey the recent and up-to-date technology to some country that they are working based on their fossil energy. Really, for work, as you said, that we should pass the transition period and work and move to the clean energy. And it's better to decrease as much as possible net zero flaring, net zero GHG, and work for the clean energy. And in Iran, especially in Iran, we don't, as I know, maybe the government is working, but as I know, in the expert of process engineer, I didn't see any plan regarding to hydrogen capacity, and we really need the hydrogen capacity build up in Iran. For example, use the flare gas. We can use the flare gas for the blue hydrogen or the green hydrogen. And in the conference, when we talk about the expert, they said that the blue energy, they are not their priority, and they are want really concentrated to the hydrogen energy. That's all.
Thank you so much, Mariam. So yeah, also not to avoid the risk, not to exclude anyone from the conversation who wants to be part of the transition. Are there any closing comments from your sides, Kirsten and Tanya?
I found the question very, very good on the risks, but I think it's a question about alternatives. And I think every human activity has an impact, because we want to have also the effect of our activities, but we have to limit, of course, the negative impact. But really, I think looking to the alternatives, there are greater or bigger impacts that other industries have.
Yep.
But we have to deal with it.
Closing comment from you, Tanya.
Just very briefly, one of the biggest risks I see is a polarization. I loved it that you answered it talking about Iran's potential for blue hydrogen. This is not something at GIZ that we would consider that positive, but the point is we got to talk about that. And it may make sense for Iran. That's my personal opinion, not GIZ. But excluding it and already closing the conversation there, that's where I see the risk. So I loved what you said about it's one energy world. Mm-hmm. We need to have the people from the old industries on the table. We can't simply be preaching to the choir. So I think that for me is the biggest risk. There's the classical ESG things, but we know how to deal with them. We know how to do that. What we haven't really learned is building a one conversation where we all sit at the table and building a just transitional world.
Thank you so much. I think that is a beautiful closing statement. I'm so sorry, I saw some other hands go up, but I'm afraid that's all we have time for now. So let's give our panelists that were really fantastic in this session a big round of applause. Sorry? Did you want to share something before?
No, I just want to say that it's time to work together for clean, sustainable, and affordable energy. And now the doors is open for all the stakeholders for that. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you so much.